I wasn't even supposed to be home that early. My shift got cut short, and I stopped by the corner store to grab a couple of things. Milk, some instant noodles, a pack of gum I didn't need. Nothing unusual. Just the kind of evening you barely remember a week later. Except she was there. I saw her outside the store, standing with 2 heavy paper bags, the edges cutting into her wrists. Mid-40s, maybe older, but the kind of older that doesn't feel like it belongs on someone's face yet. She caught me glancing, not in that way, just like when you notice a detail you shouldn't have noticed. Her ring finger bare, her eyes lined from tiredness more than makeup. "You live in the building across, don't you?" she asked when I stepped closer. I nodded. "Yeah. 4th floor. 2nd floor." She adjusted the bags against her hip. "Elevator's out again." I offered without thinking. "I'll carry them." She gave me this look like she was about to decline out of habit. Then let me. "Thanks. That's kind." The bags were heavier than I expected. She walked ahead, slower than I imagined someone her age should walk, but maybe she was careful more than slow. The street was quiet, just the hum of traffic blocks away. We didn't talk until we got inside the building. The stairwell light flickered once, twice. "You're always coming back late," she said casually, like she'd noticed before. I almost tripped on the step. "Oh yeah, work." "What do you do?" "Just retail. Nothing interesting." She half smiled at that, like she already knew the answer. On her landing, she fished out her keys. I set the bags down by her door, brushing my palms against my jeans. A small pause stretched out. Long enough for me to wonder if I should say goodnight. Long enough for her to tilt her head slightly, studying me. "You don't have to run off," she said. "You want some water? Or tea?" "I'm making some anyway." I hesitated. And in that hesitation, I caught myself staring at the grocery bags. A carton of eggs leaning against a bottle of olive oil. A small pack of raspberries. The details stuck to me for no reason. "Sure," I heard myself say. Inside, her place felt lived in but careful. A plant balanced on the edge of the window ledge, a pair of reading glasses folded neatly on the table. She moved around quietly, like she'd done this 1,000 times. The kettle clicked on. I sat at the edge of the couch, shoulders tight, unsure if I should look at the books stacked on her shelf or keep my eyes down. I traced a crease in the cushion with my finger, trying not to seem like I was waiting for something. "You take sugar?" she asked. "No, just plain's fine." The silence stretched again, but not in a way that pressed. More like the kind that left room for something to grow. I thought of the unread messages still sitting on my phone. The ones I typed and erased before sending. I thought of how often I walked past her door without a word, earbuds in, pretending not to notice if the light inside was on. She handed me the mug. Her hand brushed mine, not deliberately, but close enough to spark awareness. "Thanks," I said, though it came out softer than I meant. She nodded once, and then, almost without looking at me, she said, "You know, it's strange. I've seen you for months, and tonight's the first time we've actually talked." I smiled, small, nervous. "Yeah, strange." Her eyes lingered on me just a beat too long. Then she glanced away, almost guilty, almost something else. That's when I realized I wasn't planning to leave anytime soon. The tea was still too hot to drink. I kept turning the mug in my hands, letting the steam hit my face. She leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded, watching the kettle click off again like she'd forgotten to switch it. "You live alone?" she asked. "Yeah." I hesitated. "You?" A small pause. "Divorced. For years now." The word hung heavier than the steam. I nodded, like it was just information, but something inside me tightened. She changed the subject before I could ask anything else. "What are you studying?" I dropped out. "For now." My voice sounded too flat, like I owed her an excuse. "Just trying to figure things out." Her eyes softened in a way I didn't know how to meet. "Nothing wrong with that." I let the silence stretch. The faint hum of the fridge filled it. Her phone buzzed once on the counter, screen lighting up with a name I didn't catch. She didn't move to check it. I looked at the raspberries sitting in their plastic box, the condensation beating up. Something about them felt out of place, too delicate for the half-empty fridge. "You cook a lot?" I asked just to say something. "Enough." She gave a half-smile. "For one person, it doesn't take much." Her voice dipped at the last part. Not sad, exactly, just honest in a way most people avoided. I found myself leaning forward, elbows on my knees, like I was afraid if I leaned back, the moment would dissolve. She sat down across from me, placing her tea carefully on the table between us. For a while, neither of us touched our cups. The clock ticked on the wall. I thought about how this should feel awkward. A woman twice my age, a neighbor I'd barely spoken to. Both of us pretending tea was the reason I was still here. But it didn't feel awkward. Felt too natural, and that was worse. She caught me staring, and I looked down at my hands. "Sorry," I muttered. "For what?" I shook my head, pretending not to know. She smiled faintly, almost to herself, and picked up her tea. She blew across the surface, then said, without looking at me, "When I was your age, I used to sit like this with my neighbor. He was 30. I thought he was ancient. Funny, isn't it?" I laughed, short and nervous. "Guess it changes when you're on the other side." Her eyes flicked up, meeting mine. Just long enough to register the weight of it, then gone again. I felt heat crawl up my neck. A thought I didn't want to admit pressed at the edges, what this looked like, what it meant, the line we were towing without saying so. The kettle clicked again, though no one had touched it. She reached across the table, fingertips brushing a crumpled napkin near my hand, smoothing it out flat. The gesture meant nothing. The gesture meant everything. I didn't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. It became a pattern quicker than I expected. Some nights I'd hear her kettle through the wall and almost imagine she was waiting for me to knock. Other nights, I'd run into her in the stairwell, her arms full again, and I'd offer before she asked. But it was always small, safe, until one evening she left her door cracked, as if expecting me. I tapped the frame lightly before stepping in. She was barefoot, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled, cutting vegetables at the counter. "You cook better than I do," I said. She smiled without turning. "That's not a high bar, is it?" I laughed. Too quick, too obvious. My hands shoved deep into my pockets. The air felt different. Not heavy, not light, just close. I leaned against the counter, watching the knife move steady against the board. The sound filled the room. "You don't go out much," I said before thinking. "Neither do you." She glanced up, sharp enough to catch me off guard. Then softer, "I notice." The way she said it, like she shouldn't have admitted it, lodged itself in me. I wanted to answer, but the words tangled. My throat tightened instead. Then a knock rattled the door. Quick, casual. She froze. Just for a second, but enough. "Hey, Mom?" A voice called. Female, older than me, younger than her. Her eyes flicked to mine, wide, warning. I stepped back from the counter like I'd been caught doing something I hadn't done. She opened the door only a crack. A woman, her daughter, had to be, handed over a package. Quick, distracted. This was at the desk. "You left your name on it." "Thanks, honey." Her tone bright, practiced. The girl glanced past her shoulder, just briefly, catching me standing there like furniture out of place. No word, just the smallest flicker in her expression before she turned and left. The door shut too firmly. Silence caved in. I rubbed the back of my neck. "Didn't know you had." "She doesn't live here." She cut me off. Voice low. "She was just dropping by." I nodded. Didn't press. The kettle clicked in the background. Neither of us moved toward it. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the knife down. She wiped them on a towel longer than needed. I wanted to ask if this was wrong. if she thought about it the way I did. If the look her daughter gave me would linger in her head all night the way it would in mine. Instead, I said nothing, just watched her. She finally looked up. Our eyes held a moment too long, too sure. I stepped closer before I could stop myself. Close enough to smell the faint citrus soap on her hands. Close enough that she drew in a quiet breath. My lips parted. A thought pressed forward. But she shifted first, picking up the kettle, turning her shoulder, making space where there hadn't been any. The line almost crossed. Then not. It was late when we ran into each other again, outside the building. She was locking her mailbox. I was tossing out a bag of trash. The streetlights buzzed overhead, painting everything in a dull yellow. "Walking anywhere?" she asked. I shrugged. "Just around. Couldn't sleep." She hesitated, then closed her mailbox with a hollow click. "I'll join you." We walked down the block in silence, side by side but never brushing shoulders. The cool air carried faint hints of rain. I shoved my hands deep into my hoodie pocket, unsure what to do with them. "You don't sleep much, do you?" she said after a while. "Not really. Me neither." Her voice was quieter now. Too quiet in my place sometimes. Walls start talking back. I almost smiled at that, but the sadness in her tone caught me. We stopped near a bench under a dim lamp. She sat first, smoothing her skirt, eyes on the cracked pavement. I sat a little apart, knees forward, pretending to study the street. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Just the faint rustle of leaves, the buzz of the lamp, the sound of my heart pressing against my chest. Finally, she exhaled. "My daughter. She asked about you." I turned sharply. What did she say? That she saw someone in my kitchen, too young to be anything. She trailed off. I swallowed. "And what did you tell her?" Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. "That you were just helping. A neighbor. Nothing more." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "Is that what it is? Nothing more?" She went still. Too still. "I shouldn't." Her voice broke slightly. She pressed her hands together, fingertips whitening. "You're what, 22? I'm old enough to. I shouldn't even be sitting here. But you are." The words came out sharper than I planned. Her lips parted, like she might argue, but then closed again. She looked at the street lamp instead, blinking hard, as if light could keep her steady. "I hate how alive this makes me feel," she whispered. I froze. My chest tightened around the words. "You shouldn't say that," I said quietly. "I know." She laughed once, brittle and covered her mouth. "God, listen to me." I reached for her hand before I realized. My fingers brushed hers lightly, tentative. She didn't pull away, didn't grip back either. Just let the contact sit there, trembling. The silence thickened, every second daring me closer. Her eyes flicked down to my lips, just once. "Enough. Tell me to stop," I whispered. Her breath hitched, a beat of stillness. Then she turned, met my gaze, raw, unguarded. And instead of answering, she asked, barely audible, "What are we doing?" The next few days felt different. Her door stayed shut, blinds drawn more often. I heard the kettle once, faint through the wall, but no second click, no quiet footsteps after. I told myself not to notice, that she was busy, that maybe I'd imagined how close we'd been on the bench. The weight of her words, her hand brushing mine. But then I saw her in the stairwell, grocery bag in one hand, phone pressed to her ear. She didn't see me at first. Her voice was warmer than I'd ever heard it, almost playful. "No, I'm fine. Really. Just don't worry about me. I'll call when I can." She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that tugged at something inside me. When she hung up, she finally caught my eye. Her smile faltered. The warmth drained, replaced by something sharper, awareness. Guilt, maybe. "Hey," I said too casually. "Hi." She adjusted the bag higher on her hip. Long day. I nodded, waiting for her to say more. She didn't. She kept walking, steps quick, not waiting for me to catch up. I stood there longer than I should have, replaying that laugh in my head, wondering who it belonged to. The silence grew heavier between us after that. Nights passed without an invitation, without a glance that lingered. I found myself pacing in my own apartment, phone in hand, typing and erasing. You okay? Want me to bring tea this time? I keep thinking about the other night. Each message hovered in the box, then disappeared under my thumb, unsent. One evening, I came home to find a note slipped under my door. Just a receipt, folded, with 2 words in her handwriting. Thank you. No explanation, no context. I stared at it for too long. The next night, I lingered outside her door, hearing faint music inside, jazzed low and slow. I almost knocked. My hand hovered inches from the wood. But I pictured her daughter's face, that flicker of suspicion. I pictured the voice on the phone. My hand dropped. I walked back to my apartment, door closing too loud behind me. I lay on the couch, phone glowing in my palm. The draft of another message. I miss how it felt, sitting with you, still unsent. The ceiling hummed with the building's pipes. I thought of her kettle, her laugh, her eyes when she asked, "What are we doing?" I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing special. Just the sound of her struggling with the lock, grocery bags balanced against her hip. I hesitated in my doorway, then stepped out. Need help? She looked up. Tired eyes, faint circles. Not the guarded version of her I'd seen lately, just worn down. Please, she said softly. I held the bags while she turned the key. The door opened into the familiar scent of tea and something faintly citrus. I followed her inside without asking, setting the bags down on the counter. She leaned against it, exhaling like she'd been holding her breath for days. Everything okay? I asked. She nodded too quickly. Yeah, just long week. Her voice cracked a little on the last word. I watched her press her fingertips to her temple, eyes closed. Something in me snapped at the distance I'd been keeping. You don't have to pretend, I said quietly. Her eyes opened, meeting mine with something raw. Pretend what? That this doesn't matter. The words hung there heavier than I meant. She looked away, gripping the counter edge. You're too young to be carrying this kind of weight with me. I stepped closer, pulse in my ears. You didn't ask me to. I'm just here. Because I want to be. She laughed under her breath, brittle but real. Want. God. I'd forgotten what that word feels like. Her shoulders trembled slightly, and I realized she was fighting more than just me. She was fighting herself. The silence stretched, the kettle clicking once in the background, like it always did at these moments. Finally, she whispered, "Do you know how dangerous this feels?" Yes. My answer was steady, even though my hands weren't. But I don't care. Her eyes flicked back to mine, searching. 1,000 things unsaid in that look. I thought she'd tell me to leave. Instead, she stepped closer. Just a fraction, but enough. I keep thinking about that night, she admitted. The bench. How close I let it get. I keep thinking about it too, I said. The distance between us shrank without either of us moving further. Just silence filling the space, pulling us in. I lifted my hand, slowly, giving her time to stop me. She didn't. My fingers brushed her wrist, tentative, holding nothing but the pulse beneath her skin. Her breath hitched, but she didn't pull away. For a long moment we just stood like that, quiet, exposed. Then she smiled, small, tired, but real. Okay, she whispered. Not a declaration, not a promise. Just that one word, enough to hold us there in the fragile truth of it. Weeks passed, and the sharp edges softened. Not into something perfect, not into something loud. Just into something that worked. I'd still hear her kettle through the wall at odd hours. But now, sometimes, she'd knock once before the click. Sometimes I'd beat her to it. No invitations needed anymore, we'd just sit, mugs in hand, the clock ticking between us. There were still moments of hesitation. A glance at her phone she didn't explain. A silence she filled with nothing. My own doubts at how it looked, how it might end. But neither of us ran this time. Instead, we made it ordinary. Grocery bags carried together without comment. Shared benches on walks that didn't need words. A second toothbrush left by her sink, though never talked about. One morning, 8:47. I remember because the microwave clock blinked it back at me. I was drinking black coffee at her counter while she packed her work bag. She looked over, hair tied back loose, and smiled in that quiet way she did when she'd forgotten to guard herself. "Feels less quiet now," she said. I didn't answer, just reached for the kettle and set it on. She laughed under her breath, shaking her head. We still circled around the truth sometimes. Neither of us called it love. Neither of us needed to. The weight of the word might have broken what we had. Instead, it lived in smaller things. The way she'd cut an extra slice of bread without asking. The way I'd remember to water her plants when she forgot. On evenings when the silence stretched, we'd go back to that bench. The same one where everything almost tipped over. Now it wasn't a cliff anymore, just a place to sit. Once, she said quietly, "Funny how ordinary this turned out." And I said, "Yeah, I like it." Her hand brushed mine then, not tentative anymore, just steady. Looking back, I don't think there was ever a single moment where it began. Not the groceries, not the tea, not even the bench. It just unfolded, piece by piece, until I couldn't remember the version of life where she was just the neighbor behind the second-floor door. I don't know if anyone else would understand it. The way her kettle became a signal. The way 8:47 a.m. felt like hours. The way silence held more weight than words ever could. But she understood. And that was enough. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?